Valentine T. McGillycuddy, physically frail and battling a developing alcohol dependency following his employment as a physician at Detroit's Wayne County Insane Asylum, embarked on a fresh professional path as a topographical engineer and map maker during his early 20s. His assignments included surveying the Great Lakes and mapping Chicago following the devastating 1871 fire. His initial encounter with the Great Plains occurred in 1872 as part of the Northern Boundary Survey team. McGillycuddy participated in the U.S. Northern Boundary Survey from 1872 through the summer months of 1874. Alongside fellow topographical engineers, he progressed westward across 860 miles, beginning at Lake of the Woods in northern Wisconsin and concluding at the Rocky Mountains near present-day Glacier National Park in Montana. The expedition commenced at Fort Totten, situated near Devil's Lake, North Dakota. During autumn 1872, surveyors received orders to revisit marshy terrain between Lake of the Woods and the Red River to finalize that particular boundary section. The previously waterlogged ground would now be frozen solid, making the work feasible. Similar to other participants in the winter surveying expedition, McGillycuddy presumably wore Sioux-style moccasins that were intentionally oversized. Prior to donning the moccasins, team members protected their feet by first putting on 1 or 2 pairs of wool socks, followed by slippers constructed from blanket material. They then wrapped square blanket pieces multiple times around each foot, covering from heel to toe. Finally, they added their large moccasins, which served primarily to secure the blanket wrapping and slippers rather than for any additional purpose, according to one expedition member. Upon completing their fieldwork, the team returned to Detroit. Between March 1st and June 1st, 1874, some personnel analyzed their field observations while McGillycuddy engaged in plotting and drafting activities. The subsequent summer found him leading one of the topographical teams, returning to North Dakota and advancing westward toward the Rocky Mountains. He established survey lines that would eventually define Montana's northern boundary. McGillycuddy later remembered encountering massive buffalo herds that sometimes blocked their progress. In his recollection, buffalo covered the plains as far as vision extended. Frequently, they were compelled to halt astronomical observations at their stations, positioned at 20-mile intervals, because ground vibrations from the thundering hooves of nearby herds disrupted their instruments. During that summer, he encountered Major Marcus Reno and Lakota Chief Sitting Bull. Later in the fall, as topographical parties descended the Missouri River, he met General George A. Custer at Fort Abraham Lincoln, journey route from Devil's Lake. The route depicted starts in Devil's Lake, travels south on Highway 57 to Fort Totten, then travels south on U.S. 281 to Jamestown, North Dakota, and then turns west on Interstate 94 toward Bismarck. The route travels north on U.S. 83 from Bismarck to Minot, west on U.S. 52 and U.S. 2 to Havre, Montana, and then south on U.S. 87 to Fort Benton. After completing their work there in 1874, survey groups proceeded downstream by boat. McGillycuddy traveled to Washington, D.C., and commenced drawing maps of the border region. However, his map-drawing assignment proved brief. John Wesley Powell, who directed the Geographical and Geological Survey of the Rocky Mountain region for the Department of Interior, summoned McGillycuddy back to field operations. This assignment took him west by train to Cheyenne in Wyoming Territory, then overland to Fort Laramie, where he joined Lieutenant Colonel Richard Irving Dodge of the 23rd Infantry and the scientific expedition leaders, geologists Walter P. Jenney and Henry Newton from New York's Columbia School of Mines, and astronomer Horace P. Tuttle from the Cambridge Observatory in Massachusetts. The Black Hills Expedition, frequently referred to as the Newton-Jenny Expedition, spent the summer of 1875 exploring the Black Hills. McGillycuddy conducted surveys and collected data for maps he would subsequently create, which were among the earliest prepared for that region. During this period, he ascended Harney Peak and designated names for numerous other geographical features in the Black Hills. The expedition's principal objective was determining the scope of gold deposits in the area, which at that time constituted Lakota territory and was officially prohibited for mineral exploitation. The route along this segment of McGillycuddy's journey extends from Bismarck south on US 83 to Pierre, South Dakota, then west on Interstate 90 to Rapid City and Deadwood, a settlement that emerged shortly after the Black Hills expedition concluded, despite tribal rights to the territory. From Deadwood, the route follows the Newton-Jenny path in reverse, heading south on US 85 through Newcastle and Lusk, Wyoming, to Fort Laramie, where the expedition had assembled, then continuing to Cheyenne. At that time, Cheyenne served as Wyoming Territory's capital and a principal terminus on the Union Pacific Railroad. Following the conclusion of the 1875 expedition, McGillycuddy returned to the nation's capital to produce maps. In May 1876, he received another summons. This time, his medical expertise attracted the attention of General George Crook, who had previously met McGillycuddy during the Black Hills expedition. Crook was assembling a military campaign into the Powder River Basin. McGillycuddy traveled west by train to Cheyenne, where he encountered both Wild West performer William F. Cody and gunfighter James Butler Hickok, known as Wild Bill. He proceeded by rail to Medicine Bow Station, then traveled overland to Fort Fetterman, treating battle casualties. The physician spent several weeks at the fort, providing medical care to men injured during Crook's engagement at the Rosebud. Subsequently, he accompanied the troops into the field and joined Crook near Goose Creek. He remained with Crook throughout the remainder of summer and fall, serving as assistant surgeon as Crook's detachment moved east and then south into the Black Hills, participated in the battle at Slim Buttes, and eventually reached Camp Robinson in October, route to Fort Fetterman and beyond. The route from Cheyenne circles west on Interstate 80 to Laramie, then continues on US 30 to Medicine Bow. Travelers can take back roads to Fort Fetterman or follow highways by backtracking through Rock River to Bosler Junction, then taking Highway 34 through Sabile Canyon to Interstate 25 at Wheatland. The route follows the Interstate west to Douglas, where Highway 93 leads to Fort Fetterman. To trace McGillycuddy's route joining Crook, return to Interstate 25 to Casper, and continue north to Buffalo, near where McGillycuddy joined the general. The Bighorn and Black Hills campaigns. From this location, the Bighorn and Black Hills expeditions traveled north toward the Yellowstone River. McGillycuddy and other physicians with Crook provided medical treatment to survivors of the Little Bighorn battle. After there, they went east before heading south in the direction of the Black Hills. Before heading south on US 85, the route heads north on Interstate 90 through Sheridan, Wyoming, and Hardin, Montana, the location of the Little Bighorn engagement. From there, it heads east on Interstate 94 to Miles City, and then south on US 12 to Bowman, North Dakota. The Harsh March troops engaged in the Battle of Slim Buttes, after which McGillycuddy treated wounded soldiers as they participated in what became known by various names: the Horse Meat March, the Starvation March, or the Mud March. The famished troops were forced to slaughter their horses and mules for sustenance and to trudge through muddy, waterlogged conditions caused by continuous rainfall. The route returns to Deadwood and Lead, then south on US 385 through the Black Hills into Nebraska. Near Chadron, turn west on US 2 to reach Fort Robinson. This military post, now a Nebraska State Park just west of Crawford, also contained the nearby Red Cloud Agency, which served the Lakotas under treaty provisions established in 1868 at Fort Laramie. McGillycuddy first observed Red Cloud Agency on October 9, 1875, while serving with the Newton-Jenny expedition. The distribution of treaty annuities created intense activity at the agency. When the doctor returned with Crook's troops in autumn 1876, he was promptly assigned as assistant surgeon at Camp Robinson. Dr. McGillycuddy would spend the following 2 decades in the Black Hills region. He worked as a physician at Camp Robinson, which later became Fort Robinson, during the summer of 1877, treating both soldiers and Native Americans who had surrendered and became attached to Red Cloud Agency. He provided medical care to Crazy Horse's wife, Black Shawl Woman, who suffered from tuberculosis. He developed a substantial acquaintance with the Oglala leader from the time of his surrender in May. He also attended to Crazy Horse during the hours following his stabbing on September 5, 1877, until the chief's death shortly before midnight that evening. For 2 more years, the doctor continued to treat Native American and military patients, moving with them when they closed Red Cloud Agency in northwest Nebraska and opened a new temporary agency near the Missouri River in South Dakota. He participated in military expeditions to apprehend northern Cheyennes led by Dull Knife and Little Wolf after those people fled the Darlington Agency in Indian Territory, which is now Oklahoma, during fall 1878. He resided at Camp Robinson until shortly before Dull Knife and his followers escaped from the barracks where they had been confined following their surrender to troops. In January 1879, McGillycuddy was in Washington, D.C., where he attracted the attention of the Commissioner of Indian Affairs. He returned to the new agency being established for the Lakotas, Pine Ridge, in March 1879, assuming a new position, Indian Agent. The subsequent 7 years proved the most turbulent of his life as he administered Pine Ridge with an inflexible approach, frequently clashing with Red Cloud, the respected elder leader of the tribe, who opposed every effort Agent McGillycuddy made to compel tribal members to adopt white cultural practices. During this period, McGillycuddy personally stated he was the most scrutinized agent in the Indian service. No charges brought against him were ever substantiated. Eventually dismissed from his position for political motivations, he refused to replace his long-serving clerk with a political appointee, McGillycuddy and his wife Fanny, who had accompanied him at his various assignments since 1876, relocated to Rapid City. He became the community's inaugural mayor and the first president of the South Dakota Schools of Mines and Technology. He also served at the request of South Dakota Governor A.C. Millett during the unrest preceding Wounded Knee during winter 1890-91, treating both soldiers and Native Americans following that incident. The route turns east from Fort Robinson through Chadron, Nebraska, on US 20, then north on Highway 87 to Pine Ridge, and east on US 18, before turning north on Bigfoot Trail to Wounded Knee. Final years and legacy. Following Fanny's death in Rapid City, McGillycuddy departed the Black Hills and relocated to California, where he spent his remaining years. He remarried in 1904, had a daughter also named Valentine, and recounted his life experiences to his new wife, Julia, who authored the 1941 biography titled McGillycuddy, Agent. He died in 1939 at age 90. His cremated remains were placed in a crypt atop Harney Peak in the Black Hills. The map maker and surgeon had been the first white man to ascend it in 1875.